Hey everybody, this is Talking to Carl. Yeah, sorry, this is the first time doing this, so hopefully this is not gonna be too bad. Okay, it's okay. Hopefully it's not gonna be too bad. Sorry, I'm going in and out. I just want to make sure that like this desktop thing is not, because it's my first time using the display capture for anything, so hopefully it's not being too uh crazy with the constant video like on like picture on picture on picture on picture. So hopefully it's okay. This is my first time doing like a tier list thing, so no, I tried to get one started like a few minutes earlier, but I forgot a few people on this list, and I did not have the heart in me to like forget them because it was too important. So that's why you see like some images here that are like replaying. I could not delete the older set to start the pictures anew. So pardon me. So you're gonna probably have to start from the bottom up. So yeah, this is gonna be a video about the best Yu-Gi-Oh villains, from, or at least the Yu-Gi-Oh villains from best to worst. And it's something I really always wanted to do something like this, but I figured this is like a proper one to do. So I want to begin like starting like in alphabetical order. That's how it was set up. Igami here. Now Igami is from like the Dark Side of Dimensions Yu-Gi-Oh movie. Now I'm basing my tier list off not only the best dueling skills, but also impact it had on the overall story in the franchise. I think Agami is definitely a contender, considering that not only he went up against Kaiba and put him through the ringer until Kaiba threw a Hail Mary and summoned Obelisk the Tormentor, but he also went toe to toe with Yugi. And this is standard Yugi, not the Pharaoh Yugi. Now, he looked like he was about to beat young Yugi until Yami Yugi came in Deus Ex Machina for like a couple of minutes just to come out with the win. But I think he also had like a third duel. Just cannot recall. Eventually, I'll be rewatching the movie for my movie review, next Yu-Gi-Oh movie review. So, but I want to put Agami in the A tier. I think the fact that he was able even to go toe to toe with somebody like Kaiba and Yugi, who by this point has, gotten a little older, maybe like a year or two, probably just like a year. I think it was like a year since the events of the Duel Monsters arc completed. And he's definitely gotten a little older, a little more muscular. So he's like, a little bit more experienced than he was during his adventures. But yeah, definitely a contender to go toe to toe with the king of games. Next, Aleister. I definitely have to put Aleister along with his crew and darts on this list for obvious reasons. I got a hell of a lot of views on my review of the Waking the Dragons arc, and Valen, Aleister, and Raphael had the part of the, so far as like not even the big bads, but as far as henchmen is concerned, they had the most impactful. They just wasn't just one and done henchmen. They actually had legitimate grudges with the Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey for very different different but legitimate reasons. And with Alistair, for example, the fact that what he thought was Goldsboro's uh, uh, response, who he held at fault with the war-torn areas and him being a warmonger, pretty much, that caused him to lose not only his parents but his little brother in the process. But it turns out to be darts in disguise. Spoiler alert. But the fact that he was so, he's like the mirror image of Kaiba. It's like this is what Kaiba would have been if something ever to happen to Mokuba. He'll be this, without Mokuba, it's like, Kaiba will be even more hard and just completely, he will be full villain with like no anchor point, and almost pretty much like Alistair, or at least turn into what Alistair assumed Kaiba is. Now his deck, for the most part, I think it was a very story driven set of cards, only like a few being actual real cards. And now his it's cool looking with the Air Force's Ziggurat, but beyond that, like these toy soldiers, like the story could have, done either make those things real, or which a few of them recently have been, but he can just go on full machine deck or something, or at least have some kind of soldier themed deck, because he's trying to mirror like tanks and soldiers and stuff like that. Make like some legit like soldier like or army type of cards for him. So from what I've seen from the anime, I wasn't too impressed with his deck, but his story, I just actually do love. So he's roughly average, just C plus, C plus, C plus to B minus. Then we have Aporia. Now, I'm going to include Primo, Jacob, and Lester in this mix, because because you only get like, I believe, as I recall from 5Ds, one duel with Aporia against Yusei. But you see, a fair bit, especially from Primo, like, because these three are different iterations of Aporia's life. And story-wise, they are right. And Primo's got like some serious dueling skills that I remember being very impressed with. Less so with Lester. Jacob's only all right, but I think Primo really, because he was such the more, gung-ho of the bunch, ready to jump in, but with a fair bit of strategy, but like, obviously Jacob was the older version of Aporia with a little bit more experience to know when to attack and when not to. So combined, their deck is pretty formidable, considering that, it can devastate a lot of synchro decks. But their story is like, their story is pretty, it's all right. They definitely was like not the big bad, but it's like a one short of the big bad. Matter of fact, they had like they're partners with the big bad. So we'll get to Zone in a second, but I think Aporia, with everything I mentioned, I think they definitely deserve to be on the B list. Arcana. Now, Arcana definitely didn't have many duels. He only had that one duel against Yugi, but it's the most serious. It's been some serious duels, but this one's like, if he took the 4Kids editing out of it, he freaking try to jigsaw uh Yugi underneath the battle city at that dungeon, and it's like you got freaking buzzsaws coming at each other's legs, and he's like, he's definitely had one of the most sympathetic backgrounds, and like the only person that you see who has a legit copy of the same card as the main protagonist, which is the first, because you never see in like GX or 5Ds or any other subsequent series with the main character dueling against another adversary who's utilizing the same copy of their ace monster. It's always been like, oh, that ace monster is only theirs. It's only that single copy. This is the first time you actually get, to see it's a different variant, but it's still the same copy of the same monster. And the fact that, I mean, of course, Yugi's very skilled, but this is the first time, Arcana can actually go move for move with Yugi, as far as like laying down like 4 cards, face down with their ace monster facing off, and they just trying to go tit for tat with each other. It's an impressive duel. The entire thing was an impressive duel, on top of a very tragic character who just wants his wife back. Now I forget in the Japanese version or the manga, because I'm pretty sure it's like she met some kind of tragic end or something like that, and he in the English dub he drove her away, but it was clear that she was dead, and he was just too far gone to accept. He pretty much snapped. But I argue that we can easily put Arcana, I want to put on the B thing just for what I said, like the story aspect, and then how cool the duel was. He didn't get that many duels. It's pretty doggone solid. Just for the single duel, he definitely left an impact. And Bandit Keith for America. Bandit Keith, man, impact. You talking about like if Weevil and will be considered like one of Yugi, well, at least in Weevil's eyes, he'll be like Yugi's rival. But I think Bandit Keith can arguably be a true rival to Joey Wheeler. The fact that Joey Wheeler took this cheating ass, and put him in his place, it was just fun to watch. And he's just fun to watch as like a low-key bad guy. And it's not like an overarching villain, but just one of those rivals that kind of like, it's a shame he didn't return. I mean, you only see him a bit in Waking of Dragons as like one of those spirit ghosts that was captured by the Leviathan. But that was the last time we actually see him. Prior to that, he was mind controlled by Merrick. And it's like, you see this guy who looked like a legit threat, because in the Japanese dub, he actually had a gun and trying to shoot Pegasus. Obviously, it didn't work. But, according to his background, he's kind of like, he wanted to do anything he could. He had a troublesome time growing up, as far as like he had to do everything he could to survive. Even he had to lie and cheat in order to get where he's at, which represents in his dueling where he has no issue with cheating and had like a overall grudge against anybody who showed him up, whereas Joey or Pegasus. But his machine deck was pretty cool, like a true machine deck. I got handed to Bandit Keith. He made machines popular. It wasn't until maybe like Zane who really like took it to a whole nother level. But Bandit Keith opened the door, or at least he walked so Zane could run. But I got maybe like despite all that, because he only had like a significance in the Duelist Kingdom arc, I want to put him in the C tier. He had a good run in the Duelist Kingdom arc. But since then, anytime he showed up, is either a cameo or just utilized as some kind of puppet. Now, Bones. Speaking of rivals, Bones has definitely had definitely a memorable character. You would not forget Bones. Again, the fact that he looks like a legit zombie, but he definitely gave zombies some love. Where like is the first time I've seen Bones in the anime, it's like, utilizing a zombie deck. It was like, there's freaking all these different types. It kind of blew my mind. You got a machine, you got a zombie, fiend, spellcaster, warrior. You got wing drag, not wing dragon, but wing beast and dragon types. It was so much fun just to see these different types utilized. And the first time you see Bones duel against Joey is the first time you actually see Time Wizard fail him, and Bones capitalized off of it. But with Bones listening to Bandit Keith to try to beat Wheeler to get his star chips, y'all ultimately get not only his butt handed to him, but also being betrayed by Keith. Then getting it was nice to see him again in the Battle City arc, dueling against Bakura, which unfortunately it was no match against. So it was still nice to see Bones, some new cards with Bones, and see some legit battles. Not legit battles, but just a battle with him getting freaked out when he's normally the one who's freaking other people out with his zombie deck and his with these his little partners that was working with Keith in the first place in Duelist Kingdom, all of which pretty much all of which is pretty much trying to fake scaring people, and you're dealing with an actual person who can utilize the Shadow Realm to actually do some serious damage instead of just playing pretend. Now, but unfortunately, as much as he did leave an impact, just by the appearance alone, his dueling skills was subpar. Given the fact that he didn't even bother to put anybody through their paces like that, despite the fact that he also constantly lost. You don't see him really strut his stuff, unfortunately. All right, and we go on to a Big Five member, Crump. And as I mentioned in my review for the Awakening of the Dragons, Crump in the Japanese version has a more tragic backstory, but all that stops when you started to get into the whole perverse nature of the character. It definitely somebody can probably get Me Too'd, if you know what I mean. But I love his character, before that happens, when you hear about how his parents is not giving him attention, and he lack of support and attention from his parents, he's left to his own devices to just count things, and he only has any love he has for penguins. So math and penguins is the only thing he cared about, truly. In a way, his only two parents he ever had is math and penguins. Despite that, sad fact, his dueling skills, I wish I'd seen a little bit more from his deck. It could have been cool to see more more of an aqua deck. Because only like it's been like only recently there's been a little bit more penguin themed type of cards, but at the time of the anime, it wasn't that many, and they the English dub had to rely a lot on rely heavily on story driven cards, and unfortunately I had to put Crump on the F tier. Now the darkness is the overall GX villain, and I can barely remember what kind of cards he has, but it's very story driven. Kind of, is a lot of the bigger bads like Don Thousand, which we'll eventually get to. The overarching villains usually have like very story driven type of cards. It's very little in their decks that actually are real life cards. And the darkness, who's responsible for creating Night Shroud in the first place. He and I was considering putting Night Shroud Atticus on here, but I figure he's a part of the darkness, so I'll just keep the darkness. And like I didn't put Yubel on here either, because just for the fact that ultimately they just turn to like another spirit entity for Jaden that became a good guy. But the darkness, I cannot recall like the kind of strategy the darkness had, but I can put him on a D list because there was a lot more. Sartorius was more memorable of a character than the darkness, to be frank with you. And he left a distinct image and a very memorable deck. Now darts. Now, like the darkness, well, kind of sort of unlike the darkness, his there's a few of his cards that actually are legit cards now, like the Seal of Orichalcos, and like some like Orichalcos bits and pieces of cards that are legit cards now. It's cool, but like most of his dueling against Kaiba and Yugi have been like story driven. It's like with like the mirror knights and stuff like that. But only recently that eyeball that absorbed like damage and stuff like that. It only recently got like an actual card made in real life, but I don't think it did the exact same thing as you've seen in the anime. I can't recall, but I do love the duel overall, and given the fact that like many Duel Monsters overarching villains, definitely left an impact. And I love his story, his like machinations just to raise the Leviathan and collecting souls, and is instrumental in having contributed to Yugi's first legit loss of the show. That is nothing to sneeze at. And did something happen to the I'm about to say like something happened to my volume? No. But there's nothing to sneeze at. So I B minus, because he definitely set a lot of things up near perfectly for an amazing arc. Probably one of the best in Duel Monsters. Okay, now we got DVAC. Now, and he has technically monkey type cards, but in general is beast type, to be frank with you. And it was only like not too long ago, they this time by last year, that, in recent cards in distribution, there's been monkey themed cards, but he's definitely was a legit threat and terror for Luna and Yuna, and no, Leo and Yuna, sorry, but more specifically Yuna. I want to say I wouldn't care for Yuna. I definitely like her a little bit more than Taya, and it still freaks me out to know that Taya is probably the only person in Yu-Gi-Oh franchise that never technically lost a duel. Wow. But he's definitely like spread terror to Yuna with threatening her little spirit monsters and everything like that. I didn't really care for that little plot she had, and that could have easily been left out. I did not really care for that part. But the sheer fact that this one guy, just overall, it's like Pennywise to without the goofiness to Yuna, where it's like the overall terror he brought. But his dueling is still pretty good. It's okay. It's average. Wasn't much, like they could have just thrown in some better beast types in general rather than try to make the monkeys cards, which some of them aren't real cards. But I won't put him on a C list. He's just fairly average. And we got Dr. Faker. As far as season 1 of Zexal, and of course he was controlled by Vector. I was debating whether or not to even add him on the list, but because he was kind of influenced by Vector. But the dueling between him, Kite, and I believe Shark was in there too, really it was like an awesome duel with 3-on-1, which is I won't say it's rare, but it's when you see those, it's always a treat. And you see these 3 main protagonists of Zexal going up against Dr. Faker, who's responsible for causing devastating their lives at a young age. And him and I knew I forgot somebody. The other Vectrix. I forgot to put Vectors on his dong list. I'm not starting over, but if I had Vectors on his list, I would probably put him in the same tier as Dr. Faker. And I think both of these guys are arguably B type. So if Vector was on his list, Vectrix was on his list, imagine him on B tier along with Faker. Dawn 1000, automatic D tier, because just like the Darkness is he was the overarching orchestrator of creating the Variant Lords, and causing devastation in their lives to kind of lead them to him to control and manipulate. His dueling is it didn't really blow my mind. That's the thing. And that's why it's automatically D tier. And he's a great looking villain. That's a very creative design. But D tier. All right, Gansley. Now, Gansley, it was fun to watch because with the big 5 has all 5 of them had very interesting, and you can tell they some time put into their background. It wasn't just one and done, nobody kind of bad guys Esperoba. Even though Esperoba wasn't a bad guy, but it's that one and done kind of duel. They had at least a couple of duels between each other. And Gansley, being the leader of the Big 5, all about business, and he's obviously sadistic, given the fact that he just snatches up a lemonade stand as a kid, all the business from another kid who's, set up their own lemonade stand. He kind of like just, and he just, he's one of those like 80s bad business guys who was always the bad guy in overall 80s films. That's what Gansley is. And his dueling is pretty cool with like using Deep Sea Warrior, utilizing his Deckmaster to thwart direct attacks, or at least attacks in general, and reflect them back at the attacker. It's pretty dope. And I love the voice acting from him. Given the fact that he's kind of like a large man, he talked like, like a big guy, not big as in weight, but just like the overall stature of his voice. But I give him average C. He's an average C. B minus, but I wouldn't even put him that high. It's like as impressive he was, it's like he wasn't like up there. Gozaburo, Seto and Mokuba's father. Now we only see him duel once against Kaiba, but he definitely did his homework, given the fact that Exodia was Kaiba's, the illustration of his first major loss, and utilizing that almost like, a mental kryptonite against Kaiba, trying to psych him out, and utilizing a new, different method, at least of that time, utilizing Exodia in an entirely different way, almost to a point was almost unbeatable. It was so cool. And the fact that what Gozaburo is one of like just heartless, I wouldn't say heartless, but just like he only cares about, it's like a bad version of Howard Stark from like Marvel Comics, where he couldn't, like he's using anybody as pawns, even his own children. He did not really care. And it's, and the impact he had on Kaiba's upbringing was hard. It was like it hurts your heart just to see what he did to his own children, even his own blood son, like Noah. Because like if Noah didn't have that accident, he probably would have done to Noah what he did to Kaiba. So far as like, even though Noah wanted all that learning because he wanted to take over Kaiba Corp and just follow in his father's footsteps, until Noah realized that his own father was like, it was so easy to throw away his own son because unfortunately he was stuck in a computer, couldn't do much, and definitely couldn't run a company. But I kind of want to make Gozaburo B tier. Just, he only had that one duel. That duel definitely meant something. And the overall impact he had on specifically the Kaiba brothers' lives and how they shaped them. Johnson was a fun duel. I love when Johnson and and Wheeler go head to head against each other, because like he's just a sneaky, snively, very like the worst stereotypical version of a lawyer that you probably ever will see. And the fact that he like, because there's a lot of cheaters here, and him and Bandit Keith are probably like the most synonymous cheaters in the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. The fact that like he manipulated Joey's dice rolls and coin flips, and the fact that he even admitted that he even sent a guy to prison for stealing like a boat when he was afraid of, he has like a fear of water. It's like, wow, this guy was like a piece of crap, but he was a fun piece of crap. And just the lawyer puns and just like clearing the courtroom, this is it's so much fun. Oh my god, I don't know what to put him. It's kind of like B minus. I kind of want to put him in the B. I kind of want to put him in the B tier. I'm going to do it because it's just so damn fun. He was so damn fun. Now you got Kagamaru, the overall arcing villain of GX. Now I didn't feel. I mean, I could have put the Shadow Riders on here, but like Night Shroud was darkness, and I think Dung Zalug was just a card and didn't really mean anything to the overall plot. And Camula arguably was probably like the best one. If I had Camula on this list, she can arguably be B tier, honestly, given the fact that she took down, even though she was manipulating the situation, she took down Zane and the freaking teacher's name, Crowler, and like posed like a legit threat to the group. She took 2 spirit keys back to back, which was wild. And he was a legit vampire until Jaden had to step in to save the day. But like, Kagamaru on his own is like, he utilized the he's just an old man who tried to regain his youth utilizing the sacred beast cards. It's despite him, he's not like the overarching villain, but as far as like the first boss fight, I give him a C. He wasn't terrible, and he definitely like orchestrated events that led to like the rise of Jaden's prominence in and like popularity in the series. So he was instrumental in some facet. So I give him that. His dueling was average. Given the fact he was utilizing some discounted version of the Egyptian god cards, it was alright. Lecter. Now I said Lecter, who's pretty much if you want to think about it, if you haven't seen this kind of character, imagine Daniel Craig's character in Knives Out. That's pretty much Lecter. Thick southern accent, but I love the fact that he utilized Genzo and went up against Kaiba. It was a fun duel. You get a little bit more of Kaiba's backstory through him. Given the fact that he helped manipulate the Big Five into overthrowing Gozaburo, and then reneged. All things considering that he wanted to do away with the whole war profiteering and turn into a game company, which is not something they were, privy to that plan, because they would have agreed to that, because they got more profit from, being like a weapons manufacturer. But, this duel between the 2 of them was great, and he was pretty much the leader. You would argue Gansley should have been, like, you would think Gansley would have been the leader, but I think Lecter, who was Gozaburo's right-hand man, could easily be the overall leader of the Big Five. And given the fact that he was like the final, even though they were sharing Tristan's body to duel Yugi and Joey, he was like the final member to actually stick around to finally go toe-to-toe with these 2 protagonists. I gotta give him B tier as well. He was pretty doggone good, story-wise and duel-wise. I mean, it wasn't stellar as like maybe Faker, but I think he's like around Gozaburo's level. Akuba, father of Declan, even though he orchestrated a lot of events in Arc 5, his dueling sucked. All things considering, you would expect him, Zark was like the overall villain for Arc 5, you would think this guy should have been on the level at least somewhere between Pegasus and Darts. But no. I'm putting him on F tier. I did not like this character. And there's things about Arc 5 I did not like, and he was one of them. And there's enough said about that. His deck is not even memorable. It's just there's issues I have about Arc 5, but yeah, he's definitely one of them. All right, now we got Loomis and Umbra, pulling them together on this one. And I will eventually get to Para and Dox, but so far as the second most iconic tag team duel in the series, they really made this 4-part epic tag team duel the most memorable in Battle City. Just the fact that they pushed Yugi and Kaiba into working together, even though Kaiba was being bullheaded the whole way, only like halfway through, with not wanting to like get his pride was so big he couldn't like stand the idea of needing anybody's help to save his own brother. But in the most ass way possible, he still like low key like accepted the help and accepting Yuki's help and partnership. As in his own words, it's not in your best interest to give me bad advice, because if I go down, so will you. So it's like an ass way of accepting Yuki's help, just like mutual interest kind of situation. But these two definitely like putting like some strict limitations on what they can do, specifically on negating their ability to normal summon their more powerful monsters, which definitely they lose their ability to summon their Egyptian god cards, let alone anything like Blue Eyes. But they found a way to work around that with special summoning these guys, and it was an impressive duel, especially how serious it was, given the fact that if you're going with like the darker route or the Japanese version, like there's a little like mini not bombs, but like this like thing that would they're dueling on top of a tower, one of the tallest towers in the city, and if this little mechanism that breaks the glass underneath their feet, causing them to plummet to their deaths. And it's like, this is like so hardcore. And you'll think like the buzzsaw with Arcana was intense. This was definitely intense, given the fact that you're gonna cause these people to fall to their into the death. It's really, really messed up. But I gotta give these guys arguably a B+ on this one. Can I increase this? No. See if I can widen this a bit. All right. What's next? Oh, Maximilian Pegasus. Definitely A. Definitely deserves to be in the A tier, given the fact that it's part of the most like impactful, memorable, great deck. But like subsequently always like he even like showed up a few times for GX. This is how important this guy was throughout at least the 2 generations of Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. How important he was through the not only the creation of dual monsters, but like just like his background with Cecilia and like going to Egypt and everything like that, and creating these cards that overall left it was an overall plot to the first, well, not the first movie, but like he even showed up in 2 of the movies. But during the Bonds Beyond Time, even taking him out would have caused ripple effects and devastating effects. So he is definitely important to the overall franchise. And, the Toon World, Toon Monsters, so much fun to play with. Misty. Now, she definitely has like a tragic backstory. I just wish her deck, even though she utilized arguably a reptile deck, I wish he's starting to put in better reptile type monsters and supporting cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh card distribution. But at the time of the showing this episode in Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, I did not really care for cards. And they had to really rely on, once again, story themed cards that really isn't actual cards, because they have to pad out the episode with something and at least show some kind of dueling. So, decent story. But she's not F. She doesn't suck. But I'll give her a D. Nesbit. Definitely the first arguably win from the Big Five. Actually got like a body, Tristan's body, and like just a cold dude. He loves machines. Another machine type duelist. I said like, Ben Keith was the first. This definitely was a next step until eventually we get someone like Zane, who actually got a wildly more popular set of machine type cards. But Nesbit utilized, the mechanisms of the dueling system that people were using during the virtual world arc, utilizing this system perfectly to his benefit, where he dueling 3-on-1 with Duke, Tristan, and Serenity. And it's like he could not lose. Honestly, at some point he knew one of them was going to lose, and he was begging on Serenity. He did not really care. And he made sure none of the other two were going to trade information, so they had to rely on their own reliance on their own skills, knowing full well like Serenity has never dueled seriously before and only got like bare minimum basics. The poor girl put like a monster in attack mode and called it defense mode and could not do anything about it and suffered the consequences for it. And ultimately it ended up, causing Tristan his body just trying to protect Serenity. And it was like a very, very sad moment. But definitely he manipulated the situation, to his benefit far better than any of the other Big Five. Even though now his cards, even though he's doing a machine type deck, is very basic with no actual theme. There's a theme to it, but it's not like Cyber Dragon type of deck. This is like random machine type monsters, very generic. So I'll give it like a C. Noah, definitely A tier. Definitely A tier. Given the fact that, he utilized, his name was Noah, and he utilizing an arc, as his deck master. And he's like, pretty much like, you can tell he was like playing the, world of God. And he was pretty much, until Ghost of Boros came around, he pretty much like was the god of this virtual world. He can do anything he want. So it was kind of, like meaningful, or at least like, was kind of right to have his deck set up in a way where it's kind of like, dinosaurs, then, meteors to like change the world and like, give life. He's pretty much like, like the 7 day of creating the earth with God situation was placating. It was placating to that theme, and it was pretty smart. It may not run like a singular theme to this deck, but it fed into what Noah would think he would be as God, who can feel like he can do anything he wants, even smite people, by which turning people to stone at a whim. And it was, he can twist a little fuck of a kid, but definitely like A tier of a character. Panic. I wish we got to see like the duel between him and Mai, to see actual Mai's, arguably first loss. And but I just like the look of this character and the overall beefiness of this man who Yami Yugi actually like to step up to, and it's like did not even care how big he was. And it's like really like showing how scary Yami Yugi can be when pushed. And not it wasn't like legit the first time, but it's something like you get the inkling that Yami Yugi ain't nobody to play with, especially if you try to cheat. Definitely give you like a penalty game on that stuff. I'll give him Panic an F. Despite being like a supposed dueling mercenary or whatever, he definitely, didn't really offer much. Then of course you got Paradox. Not to be confused with Para and Dox, but Paradox. I love, Bonds Beyond Time. That was like something I was one of my most anticipated animated movies, or not animated, but anime movies, especially from a franchise that I love to this day. And the fact that causes for the first time in I don't want to say the first time in, just bringing three of major Yu-Gi-Oh protagonists into one film and meeting each other for the first time to deal with an overall threat they could not handle on their own like they typically would with any other person. And it was incredible. It was a highlight moment for me, and it's like it was incredible. I loved it. I loved it a lot. And dueling with the Malefic cards definitely was cool. And there are actually legit cards. Sorry. There are actually legit cards that you can get and use. But it's like I wish there was more to the support to those cards. But I love the Malefics. So I want to give it like a good A. Give him a good A. Paradox, not only get to see him in Duel Monsters as the first tag team kind of duel where you have to learn how the tag team system works, but you get to see them again in GX, which is kind of fun. It's the first time you get to see, people from the previous generation show up and in the next generation as like another set of just still being dueling mercenaries, and actually like putting not only, well, I want to say putting Jaden through his paces, but Cyrus through his paces, because at this time Cyrus was like still like meek little kid, and it's like self-doubting himself, but it's something that it was fun to watch. I won't say like super impactful, but definitely like a stepping stone for Cyrus more specifically, as far as like the first real, I won't say threat, but like an opponent that Cyrus can feel like once he beat, kind of boost his morale a bit and feel like he's able to take another challenge without downing himself, and then learning how to, use the cards with some thought behind it instead of just playing, which is like the thing Zhang was trying to teach him, but he didn't bother to just say it. You feel like it's not something you can just teach. Yes, it is. You can teach your little brother how to play the game intelligently without just throwing cards down, because you're just being like an awful brother. But Paradox is fun, and that rhyming, it was a great gimmick for them. One duelist will be cream, so you must duel as a team. I give them a C. Let me give them a C. I like their deck, but like once again, it's kind of like Ned's bit with his like very early phase Yu-Gi-Oh, with like kind of like the first batch of cards that was sent out, and they formulated like a deck that kind of balanced them out with like making the Gate Guardian and everything like that, which is cool. But even still, I think Lumis and Umbra, took it to a whole nother level with the tag team and combining their mass cards. Raphael. I think Raphael deserves S tier. Personally, I think he deserves S tier because not only the Guardian deck is pretty dope, but he was the first to give Yugi his first legit loss. It wasn't like, like Rebecca, he surrendered for friendship reasons, or like when Pegasus in like the second or third episode with the timer running out kind of crap. This is the legit loss with no BS involved. And of course, it requires some goading from Raphael to cause Yugi to utilize that seal or recalcos, but that's irrelevant given the fact that he still duel legitimately between the two. He didn't cheat or anything like that. He played a bit of mind games, but this is like a guy who dueled honorably, despite at that time not believing Pharaoh being honorable. But this dude was a beast, managed to do something not even like the overarching villains were able to do, which is saying something. Rex Goodwin. I think Rex Goodwin was like, I never expected him, because I knew he was like, bad in some way when I first watched 5Ds, but it took a while, because in the first season of 5Ds, had like a lot of episodes, but it took a while before he actually turned into like the overarching bad guy, because it wasn't like he was waiting behind the scenes to do it. He was like with like the whole thing with, it was properly planned, and manipulation, and like just you never knew with this guy. And I like him for that. I wish his cards, I think he had, I say he I wish he would have like more support to his cards, but I think it's serviceable still, considering that the whole Moon Dragon and the Sun Dragon go back and forth. If one destroys, the other comes back, and it's like go back and forth, back and forth. I like that concept. That was so unique. And like him, like even creating, not only the, signers, but the, help orchestrate, the dark signers. So that's the type of machinations that's very impressive. I arguably give him nearly S tier, but it's like no, I gotta say he's definitely S tier. Like I said, I wish this deck a little bit more, but it still got the job done. It wasn't poor. It wasn't relying so heavily on story themed cards. These was like legit cards, and he was doing legit bad things and combining dark and light signers together on his own person to the power of the Crimson Dragon and the Dark Signers to like devastate and manipulate the world in his own image. That was pretty dope. Rex Raptor. Just like with Weevil in The Waking of Dragons, it's like I love that arc. I mean, at least that those 2 episodes when it's like you see that like all this animosity they had against Yugi and Joey, being like they're on the top of the world, and just like that took him from him just by these nobodies that came out of the blue. And of course they was already snotty little kind of like sore winners for a while until somebody brought them down to our level, and they took offense to that. It's like those kind of moments, like those troll people. Rex and Revo are like those trolls on the internet that like you play a game like online and like you go up against some kind of troll, and then once you whoop their ass, they firing off all these obscenities and stuff like that because they cannot handle it. That's Rex and Weevil to a T, except it's in person. And like they love their popularity. It wasn't necessarily one note villains, but you get to see that like they enjoy the fame. It's like those kind of people that if Macaulay Culkin as a kid, who had all this fame, and then all of a sudden it's yanked from underneath him, and he was on the downward spiral, that kind of thing. But unlike Macaulay Culkin, Rex and Weevil never took that opportunity as like a learning lesson to better themselves. But I gotta give them at least a C, because I love the Dino deck, and they definitely were significant in like as like a stepping stone, unfortunately, to get Yugi and Joey to a particular place that they are to better themselves as duelists. It was Rex and Revo arguably who helped them to get to a certain point, or at least get them through that door. Roman Goodwin. Now, he's definitely like put Yusei through the ringer as far as like his insect deck. And given the fact that Yusei is afraid of insects, and he's dealing with more specifically spiders, which I can relate. He put Yusei through the ringer with his deck. It's like it was fun, it was interesting, and like with that added connection with Yusei's father, and Rex and Roman being the only 2 that was partners with his father, and only ones who know the real truth about what happened with Inner D and all that other stuff, definitely has some significance. So I want to give I want to give him S tier, like A+ to S tier, because that was pretty dope. He was arguably one of the better, dark signers amongst the bunch. Or him and Callan. I didn't want to put Callan on this list because he just turns to the good guy at the end. And these are like, arguably Misty as well. But Rex was too good, and Roman was too good to not put on this list. And he arguably is a legit good duelist, and utilizing the insects in such a unique way, and having like a legit support and legit synchro monsters that arguably placated to Yusei's fears, that kind of like really gets him psychologically. That was pretty good. Sartorius, not even going in front, S tier all the way. Great Yu-Gi-Oh! GX villain. far better than even Darkness, and it's like they could have done so much better with the Darkness. Honestly, it kind of felt because the Darkness kind of felt like, you know, all this build up for a less satisfying, final boss. Sartorius, satisfied all the needs for like a proper anime villain, or at least Yu-Gi-Oh villain, and that was pretty dope. Even though he later becomes a good guy, but he has to be on this list with the great deck, with the tarot card deck, and like the light of destruction kind of thing. All of it was so good. Great bad guy. They got Sayer. This is one sadistic motherfucker. Being like manipulating Akiza, manipulating Misty, killing her brother, manipulating and torturing young kids who are like budding psychics, but just anybody who's not on the level of bare minimum of Akiza, the Black Rose, or at best him, he tortures and tosses them into the gutter. And this dude, guys, come up as pretty well being swallowed up by Misty's Earthbound Immortal. It's like one of those satisfying deaths in anime, because this dude was like, he was like a true piece of shit, and he killed Carly, that causing her to turn into a dark side of herself. So it's like, he may not be like an overarching villain of the 5Ds, but he definitely had a significance in Akiza's. And I kind of wish Akiza had like a hand in his downfall personally, but otherwise he's still pretty dope as like a true villain. And I definitely want to, and his psychic deck, he really made psychic types was around this time when psychic types was like one of the new types in Yu-Gi-Oh cards. He really made them shine. And the best psychic type that deck that I like using is the Cosmo theme deck, which if you watch me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl, you can check out my video on me utilizing the Cosmo theme deck, which is like a cool combination between the Wizard of Oz and Star Wars. It was pretty dope. Check that out. I go through all that on my channel, so check that out. I played that deck twice, so it's 2 different videos. There's a more recent one I did with like a video as part of my favorite archetypes in the game. It's like it's in the name, my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh archetype decks. Siegfried von Schroeder. Definitely, it's kind of like the Justin Hammer to Kaiba's Tony Stark. He was fun. In another foil for Kaiba, unlike Alistair, we got a little bit more with him, with like his little brother, and like him trying to take over Kaiba Corp. There's a lot of people trying to take over Kaiba Corp, but he definitely had like just animosity, just like one of those Hackfield and McCoy type of rival companies that the fathers had an in for each other. So that kind of, whittled down to the, at least to Siegfried. Kaiba didn't really pay no mind, honestly. But Siegfried kind of inherited that grudge. And if it wasn't for his little brother and then the loss they suffered against Yugi in like the Grand Championship, he didn't come to realize, he had to let go of that kind of old family grudge and forge his own path and treat his brother with a little more respect instead of like a pawn. So definitely having a significance in like the Waking of the Dragons arc before it gets to the final arc of the Duel Monsters series. And like I love his Valkyrie deck. His Valkyrie deck is so much fun to look at. Even though like half of those cards aren't real cards, I just like the whole Time Goddess and the Mystic, like of the Time Goddess and like all these other goddess theme like support cards where he like controls the past, present, and future trying to control the opponent's deck, trying to control the opponent's deck and everything like that, any which way he can with what he draws, what he puts on the field, and so forth. That was really dope. I arguably say like he's definitely A tier, because like it's definitely significant, and just like counting on getting his Valkyries on the field and causing devastating direct attacks right off the bat to give him like a massive lead into the game. That was pretty dope. Seeker, one of the rare hunters. Now, Seeker. Now, it's hard to say. Was he arguably B? No, I think I'm putting him on a C list because this is definitely significant for like the first round of the Battle City tournament to start off with, and Yugi having to go up against an Exodia deck and be put through the same position that Kaiba went through, and actually really test his mettle and test his new cards that we will see throughout the rest of the series moving forward, as far as like how he will handle dealing with an Exodia user. And it's hard to say, like, because during the Duel Monsters, the first season, the Exodia pieces were supposed to be like very rare and nobody else had the copy. But then you see, and then we will toss them off the boat and stuff like that. So has Seeker found them the same way Merrick found Bandit Keith in the water at the end of Duelist Kingdom arc? Maybe, and then made copies. It's possible. I'm not sure why Yugi never bothered. Well, they have to do the anti-rule and take the red eyes that he took off that the Seeker took off of Joey, so I guess he couldn't take the Exodia pieces. But those copies, one of those sets probably did belong to Yugi. He should have gotten those back. But anyway, Seeker definitely tested Yugi's strategy skills, how to work around, and definitely taught me how to work around a Exodia user, pretty much negating their access to their deck or destroying their deck and removing their ability to put those pieces in their hand. Without those, Exodia users are neutralized. Unless you have contract with Exodia, then you probably have to remove those pieces from the game overall. So I give Seeker a C. A very average duelist, but a significant average duelist. Then you got Strings. This was a fun one, and I love it so much. It's one of my favorite Battle City duels when Yugi really was struggling, like a first legit struggle of a duel that he had for the first time, and he didn't know how to handle dealing with an Egyptian god card that just keeps getting stronger no matter what he does. When thanks to Kaiba, he come to understanding how to turn a monster like that to turn that power against him, and that was dope. I give Strings a B because that duel was amazing. Even though Strings never talked, he was like a mime that Merrick talked through. That was pretty dope. And the Worm Drake and Humanoid Worm Slime and Revival Jam, all that stuff in combination was great. And just want to mention, I said this before when I tried out Merrick's deck. I managed to pull off that that looping move where Yugi took control of Revival Jam, caused it to be destroyed, but revives on my side and forces. It's like that, never-ending loop. And unfortunately, it didn't keep continuing. It stopped after maybe 3 turns, but at the time I was not doing any streaming or this was like a long time ago, way before I decided to do all this the make this decide long ago, before I decided to even make this channel. I had it, I did it, and like it never happened again. But I wish I recorded it, so like I had it for like posterity, because that, like, I was happy with myself to manage to pull that off. Never thought I would actually be in a position to actually pull off that move. No, I wasn't using. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I wasn't utilizing Merrick's deck at the time. I was utilizing Yugi's deck, obviously, and still managed to pull off that looping move. That was pretty dope. Valen, A tier all the way. Given the fact that great background, but also it wasn't like a person who was manipulating Mai. He legit cared for Mai, and he cared for her so much that he was willing to neutralize any threat he saw fit that might do her harm, even though she wasn't reciprocating that feeling. He still went out of his way because he cared for her, and it's like a nice foil for Joey. Like if Joey went down like a different path, he would have been Valen. And I wish we had like legit armor decks though, like he has. He could have been like the Tony Stark, like a low rent Tony Stark with the armor pieces and stuff like that. And it was so dope. And we don't have that in real life, and that's a shame. And I wish that was real, utilized in some fashion. But his story is so good, and the dueling it looks so great. It satisfied all needs as far as like a great Yu-Gi-Oh duel. Vector is like, you talking about sadistic. It's like really up there with like probably slightly more so than even like Noah or Sayer as far as like a sadistic duelist. It's fair to say he's around the same level of sadistic as Yami Merrick, and the fact that he's just as manipulative as like let's say Darts, but took it to his further, like the machination skills as Darts and Sartorius, coupled with the sadisticness of Sarah and Yami Merrick. I played with Vector's deck what little I had on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist game, but watching the episodes with him in it during Zexal and his dueling, shows some bit of sadisticness, and that's why I say, like, the way he played everybody, and even turning against his own Barian Lords, even after he found out he was manipulated by Don Thousand, he just went even further with like sadisticness. He did not, even after he found out he was manipulated into being what he is, he ultimately probably snapped even further, but ultimately did not care. He still like wanted overall power, and just not even power, he just wanted the chaos of it all. And that made him arguably one of the best characters in the Zexal. Despite certain feelings I have for Zexal, some of the bad guys there are dope as hell. Next, Weevil Underwood. And average, automatic C. But like Rex, he was like a nice stepping stone for Yugi and Joey. And especially is a lot more fun seeing him going up against Joey in Battle City, because like what I wish is, since like Weevil took on Yugi, and his real grudge was against Yugi, giving him his first loss, but the fact that he also lost against Joey in Battle City, I kind of wish Rex had like a moment where they're pretty much trading rivals, and at some point in Battle City, Rex goes up against Yugi, just to see like that kind of trading partners, dance partners in a sense. Yami Merrick, S tier, all the way. Talking about like great villain. Right up there with Bakura, which where is Bakura on this list? Are you kidding me? I know I have Bakura on this list. God dog it. Are you kidding me? I swear I thought I had Bakura on this doggone list. But that's all right. If Bakura was on this list, he is my favorite, and this one kind of gets under my skin right now because like I know I added him on this doggone list. He's one of my favorite anime villains of all time, and he and Yami Merrick definitely deserve S tier. Matter of fact, along with Zark, as a matter of fact. Given him, like I said, my feelings against Arc 5, that final duel between like Zark and the combined different versions of Yuya, reforming to this overall monster of a duelist, really put like several duelists through their paces as they take turns trying to take down this overall bad guy. But Yami Merrick, best overall Yu-Gi-Oh villain, arguably probably a lot of people's fan favorite, maybe right behind Maximilian Pegasus. And Zone, while not terrible, he's definitely D tier. Not necessarily something that blew my mind, but given his history and everything like that, it's like, all right history, but dueling, he's like the a variant, different time variant of Yusei. You expected it a bit more, but I give him like a D. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything else is just copies. I can't believe like, what the heck happened? I know I added Bakura on this doggone list. That pisses me off. But just imagine, Bakura being on the S tier list as one of the best villains, best duelists. Like he only like won against Bones, but the overall overarching villain, and given the fact that his history and what you find out about his Thief King Bakura days and what happened to his village, and the people in, at least one of the people in Pharaoh Yugi's inner circle who caused the mass destruction of his village just to form these millennium items that in present day still wreaking havoc in some fashion depending on who has it. It's significant. So yeah, Bakura definitely, S tier. Bakura, Zark, Merrick, Sartorius, Roman and Rex, Raphael, S tier, all the way. A tier, Amagi, Pegasus, Noah, Paradox, Sayer, Siegfried, Valen, Vector, A tier. B tier, Aporia, Arcana, Darts, Dr. Faker, Gozaboro, Johnson, Lecter, Loomis and Umbra, Strings. C tier, Alistair, Bandit Keith, Divac, Gansley, Kagemaru, Nesbit, Para and Dox, Rex, Seeker, and Weevil. D tier, Darkness, Don Thousand, Misty, Zone. And F tier, Bones, Crump, Akaba, and Panic. So yeah, those are my tier lists. So tell me what you guys think. It'd be interesting to know how would you rearrange this in your own way? And if you want me to do something like this again, let me know, and maybe I'll do something for like maybe somebody with like significant maybe like I don't know yet. I don't know yet. Maybe like different X-Men members, something like that. Maybe something with significant amount of people, so it won't feel like light. But anyway, thank you all for joining me. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to Talkative Carl on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Follow me on my Patreon, patreon.com/talkativecarl. And I'll see you guys possibly Monday. I want to hurry up and get into some stuff that I wanted for like other reviews. So I need to get the leg up on that. So take care, and I'll see you guys later.